Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. For anyone who doesn't know me yet, my name is Brooke Berlin. I'm the North American representative for Tswalu Kalahari in South Africa. And Tswalu is one of the founding members of the National Geographic Unique Lodge portfolio. And through that association, I've been able to meet some really fantastic people and learn about some amazing properties all around the world. And while I specialize in Africa, because so many people are looking for things a little bit closer to home right now, I thought it would be fantastic to introduce all of you to my very dear friend, Keith Sproule, who is the owner of the Bentwood Inn, one of the Nat Geo Unique Lodges, but also one that is on the border of what we like to call the American Serengeti. So I was very happy that Keith wanted to join me today. He's going to walk you through a little bit of the Bentwood, and then all of our follow-up, of course, will include links and details and things that you might need going forward. So Keith, over to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for organizing this, Brooke. Brooke and I also share Africa Connects. I was, in addition to owning the Bentwood, 5 years with the World Wildlife Fund in Namibia, and have worked in East and Northern Africa at various different times. So there's definitely an affinity, and a lot of the way that we've structured the Bentwood is going to be familiar to all you Africanists who understand the beauty of a lodge and a lodge environment and a boma. If I say boma here today, most folks will understand, but we call it a fire pit otherwise. So I'm biased. I am totally biased. I'm going to share with you what I think is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful valleys in the United States. And I want to start at the destination level. And we are on the southern end of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, which is, when we say sort of the Serengeti of North America, it has it all. It has all of the mega fauna, the largest wildlife in North America, with the exception of polar bear. Literally in our destination, you can find grizzly and black bear and elk and moose and all the ungulates and lots of migration and migratory patterns. But it's really special, that bottom sentence: 97% of Jackson Hole is protected, and that's real. There are two national parks, Grand Teton National Park and Yellowstone, the world's first national park. We've got 3 wilderness areas, 4 national forests, Bureau of Land Management land areas, and a lot of privately protected lands, including the first national species-specific national refuge for elk that was established at the turn of the century. And so as you look out on this scene, you see the topography. And that topography is really what defines the specialness of Jackson Hole. In the old Western lore, a hole was any land area that was surrounded by mountains. In our instance, we've got the Yellowstone Plateau to the north, the Grand Teton Mountains, block fault uplifts to the west, and the Gros Ventre Mountains to the east. Inside of that hole, named after Davy Jackson, who was the first white settler / mountaineer arrival, you've got 97% protection. And that means that there's 3% that everyone sort of fights over in order to get their little anchor of exposure to all of that amazing recreation and that amazing wildlife in these types of scenes. So these mountains, if you can imagine a candy bar pushing up against each other on either side, and then one side of it goes under the other, that's the uplift that you're seeing there, and it's pretty dramatic. It is perhaps one of the most photographed mountain ranges, certainly in the US, but globally easily recognized. And then we've got all that water that flows through. A lot of it comes out of the mountains. A lot of it comes down through the Snake River from the Yellowstone Plateau. On the east side, we've got a river that flows out of the Gros Ventre River. And this contributes to habitat that is very conducive to some of the most spectacular birding opportunities in the US, and certainly creates habitat for all of our resident ungulates. I'm kind of sharing just a few little snippet of images. These shots are not difficult. One of the most amazing features of visit to Jackson is that everybody goes home with the most amazing photographs. And of course, it becomes amazing backdrops to those family photos. We've got activity galore. if you can imagine a Western type of experience, we've pretty much got it all. Whether that's a love of fly fishing or lake fishing and angling, you've got some of the best hiking and climbing, horseback riding, certainly long distance. So if you're really into a backpack, it's going to be multi-day. If you want to take horses into the wilderness, our pack trips are pretty spectacular in terms of their ability to take you into the epicenter of isolation. And on vacation, that's what a lot of people are really looking to experience. The point in the continental US that is furthest from any road is about 50 miles away from where we are in the Absaroka Range, but it's all part of that greater Yellowstone ecosystem, of which Jackson Hole is on the southern end. And of course, we've got lots of cultural heritage as well. This is one of the most photographed barns in the world. And this is out on an area called the Mormon Row, and it was settled by Mormon, very, very hardy agriculturalists that came into the valley 150 years ago. And it sits now in the middle of the national park. But here's one of the best features of Jackson, is that all of this beauty and all this diversity and all the resource is something that the community really takes to heart and has taken a very proactive stance in terms of stewarding the conservation and the preservation of the valley. And that manifests in comprehensive plans that are very conscious of wildlife and wildlife movement and wildlife corridors. And it manifests in the population that lives there and establishes themselves ready to host visitors, and how we reduce, reuse, and recycle, how we manage our energy, the investments that we make in terms of sustainability. The Bentwood Inn is very proud to have been a founding member of 1% for the Tetons. Many of you know Patagonia and their commitment to 1% for the planet. Yvon Chouinard lives in the valley, the founder of Patagonia. We went to him and said, you know, it sort of feels a little ethereal to go 1% for the planet. We would like to contribute to sustaining this valley. And he gave us the nod to establish 1% for the Tetons. And so collectively, there's about 50 businesses that we contributed 1% of our revenue back to sustaining the beauty of the valley. This is a feature that you can't but experience when you come in to Jackson Hole, whether it's the bartender or the waiter or the person you meet on the trail, talking about the things that the community does to live with wildlife. Certainly, as you see wildlife in the valley, as you drive, you're going to find that there's a lot of signage. Slow down, moose ahead. Here's a crossing, and the way that we build bridges in order to facilitate the crossing. And the Bentwood, we tie in consciously, aggressively. We've got a very proactive sustainability management plan, and we're happy to share that with our guests. In fact, we think it's one of the burdens that we positively embrace, which is we really want to educate people about what we do to sustain our little bit of this beautiful area of Jackson, a little bit of Wyoming, a little bit of the States, and globally is, you know, that to the extent that we can share with you what we're addressing and how we're addressing energy, water, conservation initiatives, certainly how we recycle, how we source our food stuff, local and organic. But I'll cross you over now from the destination of which we are a part to what is that Bentwood Inn experience. Massive log lodges, log lodge, and these logs came in from Yellowstone, and they were at a stand that was proximate to the Great Fire in 1988. And they didn't burn, but the heat dwarfed their growth, and the Park Service wanted to clear cut in order to build an interpretation facility in order to highlight this is before the fire and after the fire. And so our timber with which the lodge was built is 200 years old, and it really defines that ambiance that contributes to the guest experience. Upon arrival, and certainly every room, you feel that. We have a professional chef in residence. She's been with us coming on half a year now, which was relatively short for the tenure, but we're very proud of the fact that we stole her from the best restaurant in Boulder. Kate Horton is our chef in residence, and we've got great relationships with local CSA, a community supported agricultural farm, and we get a lot of produce as much as possible during their growing season because of our seasonality. Our growing season is not very long. There's a really wonderful entity in Jackson called Vertical Harvest, and they've built a vertical greenhouse that produces year-round, and they've got a double down commitment that they only hire folks with disabilities. And so we've got a share of Vertical Harvest, and we get microgreens year-round. Of course, we produce as much as possible. Our meals will be in the context of local elk, bison offerings. We tailor our diet and any dietary restrictions, of course. One of the features we're finding is that we've historically done a twice a week opt-in Bentwood Bistro dinner because there were so many magnificent dining options in the Valley. But we've had a lot of requests of late in current circumstance to stay in. And so we're offering many more meals, a little more family friendly, let's say, and barbecues. Of course, we've organized for socially distanced seating. We used to have a beautiful morning buffet that is now a plated experience. We've got different seating times to ensure that folks feel comfortable and confident. But we've recrafted the dining experience that I think actually contributes to a much richer guest stay. One of the things that we run on a twice a year basis is a wildlife safari and photo workshop. We work with National Geographic as a member of the Unique Lodges of the World collection. And Andy Coleman, the former editor of the Nat Geo Traveler magazine, comes out for a week, teaches wildlife photography. This is one of his pictures, and I love this one. This is Andy, a picture of Andy out getting ready for one of his iconic images. And he brings his guests out, his students out to these wonderful scenes to capture these types of images. And then come back to the lodge, and they do their training, and they do some more focused evaluation of what they've shot, and with his tutelage and his guidance. But you don't have to go very far. We have so much wildlife right on property. It is a very common feature to see moose in our backyard, elk come through in the context of the slow down, stay at home. The wildlife understood that. And literally we had a herd of 30 elk in the backyard, and certainly all of our mule deer come through on a regular basis. This is kind of a fun shot that was taken by a guest. I invite you, even as we're talking, to go to www.bentwoodinn.com and enjoy. We've got a video on there of bear that were literally out the front door. We've got a couple crabapple trees, and wow, did mama and her cub really want those apples? And so a guest shot these black bear climbing the tree 10 feet out of the front door. And that video is there, and many other photos. We've got a photo gallery, and you can learn quite a bit more about the property itself. In the context of experience, we are a fantastic multi-generation destination because there's something for everybody. We've got bikes for guests to utilize, and the young ones can take off with mom and dad. Grandparents can stay at home, have a cup of coffee, glass of wine in front of the fireplace. We can certainly organize those family dinners. If everyone is game, of course, all the activities, the hiking. If not, whitewater rafting. There's beautiful float trips right in front of the Tetons, all of which are being reorganized by our local vendors. We've got fantastic relationships. A highlight of a Bentwood Inn stay is a wildlife safari. And we work very closely with Jacksonville Wildlife Safaris. We encourage almost every guest to go on a wildlife safari with a professional wildlife biologist. Many of them are former park rangers and have a really deep understanding of the valley and how wildlife at various times are surviving and thriving. And this is how we organize for a festive gathering, weddings, events, family reunions. We can offer up everything from a gentleman with a guitar around the fire pit, the boma, to more staged and elegant affairs. I think the log lodge ambiance contributes to settling in, to that quality time that we all aspire to, especially now. We are very available for whole-in reservations. You can take over the whole property, bring as many folks as you've been quarantining with, or invited others that you feel confident being around, and that's a wonderful way to experience the property year-round. whether that's for fall and elk bugling or winter to ski, snowshoe, dog sled. In the spring, participate in the wildlife photography. We've had Andy extend, not just for those folks that sign up as individuals or as a couple, but to take over the property and spend 3 days with Andy, and he gives personalized instruction to a dedicated group. And of course, in the summertime, we are part of a Western circuit that people often make in terms of national park journeys. This year in particular, we've associated with a number of tour operators that are organizing tours that start in Montana, make their way through Wyoming on down to Colorado or across to Utah, Arizona. Very happy to be a part of itineraries that you might be thinking to craft. We can do specialized dining for any of our groups at almost any time. And again, we've just got this wonderful chef in residence for delivering on that. You know, I'm not going to focus on our rooms because we deliver quality. It's about the destination. Inside of the rooms, we do have personal fireplace, a private porch or balcony that overlooks into the mountains. You can see those moose in the morning. Of course, every room has high-end luxury amenities, eco-friendly amenities that we provide. We now have 7 rooms that are available. We're actually in the tail end of some construction to have 3 more rooms added to the property. You won't find those at bentwoodinn.com as part of our profile, but starting in August, we're going to have the ability to offer 10 rooms in the context of a whole inn stay, 3 additional rooms for guests that might find our current reservation calendar full. We have historically booked out for holidays and that intense summer season or June weddings well in advance. That migrated away, but I'll tell you, it's coming back, and we're very happy for that. And we're certainly delivering a very safe and we think a luxurious guest experience as they go out and explore the diversity of what is Jackson Hole. So I think this might be a little shorter than the usual Brooke organized presentation. I suspect that a lot of the Africanists here, because of your spirit of adventure, your intrepid nature, you probably know a little bit about Jackson, but I'm very happy to have introduced the Bentwood Inn in the context of your understanding. So Brooke, I'm not hearing you, just FYI.
Thank you. I had muted myself so that I didn't interrupt the presentation. So thank you very much, Keith. I appreciate that. And I said I'm sure everybody else does as well. And I'm starting to see questions come in, which is great. And as they come in, I'll also just add, you know, many of you that know me know that if I'm going to promote something or speak about it, it's because I've been able to experience it myself, and I would put the full weight of my belief of conservation and community and philanthropy, everything that Nat Geo Unique Lodges, everything that I stand for in Africa, all that we actually try to portray. And I have had the amazing opportunity to stay at Bentwood. I like, Keith, when you were talking about how it's so good for settling in, because I brought Yahan there for his birthday in January, specifically to do a snowmobile tour into Yellowstone. And the day that we were supposed to do it, it snowed so much we couldn't get in. And I called Keith and said, can we stay another night? Can we stay another night? And we ended up kind of keep staying until we could get into the park. And we settled in front of that gorgeous fireplace that you showed in the living room. And I think just kept throwing more and more logs on, and we were sitting there working, but we settled in and did not move from that fireplace for about 3 days. So really incredible property. So now I will get to some questions. I have the first one. How would you describe an average guest, and can you do triple rooms for parents with 1 child?
You bet. So historically, I think we are a good mix, depending upon the reservation. If we've got a family unit that's come in and multi-generation, we're super happy and accommodating to kids' diet, and you know, the gentleman who needs to get up early and have coffee and wants something special before the family arises, to, you know, those evening dinners that can be made formal, or we can do a barbecue around the boma, around the fire pit. Our average guests in the season, which would be the summer, Jackson Hole is a rather non-typical ski destination, although arguably some of the best skiing in North America. I'm biased. Is right up the road, just a few miles to the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. We do get 3 times more guests in the summertime because people coming in for that western swing. And so they'll come down from Yellowstone and continue on to other parks. That said, summertime, it's everything from families to couples to newlyweds. And then in the fall and spring, of course, when kids are in school, we tend to have a slightly older demographic that would be able to travel at that time. And then we revert back to skiers and folks that are up there for a winter experience. Sometimes we get people out of Texas and Florida that just want to go see the snow and take a wildlife safari in the wintertime to see how the wildlife are surviving at that time. But we certainly get lots of families that come in and ski. We get lots of dedicated groups. We love these guys. The old ski crowd, that have been skiing together since they were in college, and they still like to go out. And maybe they don't thrash quite as hard or stay up quite as late, but they enjoy settling in with us. So we do have everyone, and we try to cater to everyone.
So since you were just speaking about winter, let's stick with winter just a little bit. I think I answered the question, yes, you absolutely can snowmobile in winter. And then the other questions that I think would pertain to winter, do all rooms have fireplaces, and are they wood burning or gas? And can you at the same time speak about the wolf experience? Are they found nearby, and how do you get to see them?
So let me go back to Yellowstone and and snow machines. You have to you can take a snow machine in. It's a little bit bumpy. It's a little washboardy. Long day. Totally available and an adventure that you can sign up for. Or you can take a snowcat in, which is much more accommodating to comfort and cushioned seats. And it's a warm environment, and you're with 16 people now. I don't know how they're going to operate this season, given all the restrictions that we're working with. We recommend that guests go snowmobiling up on the Continental Divide because there's amazing, extensive trails. There's a few lodges up there that open in the wintertime, so you can, spend 2-3 hours on trails. You can self-guide, or you can hire a guide, pull into a lodge, sit down, have a lunch, a beer, get back on, and enjoy a full day in that regard. And of course, sled dogging is very, very popular with our guests. Wow. All right. I wanted to hit that, and then I'm forgetting what the other question was.
Wolves. Yes. About the wolf experience.
We have wolves. They're hard to see in the valley. There's certainly wolf kills that get communicated, and people know where to go for those. To really see wolves is the Lamar Valley up in Yellowstone. And we highly recommend that. Many guests come down from the Lamar and join us. We can't guarantee, of course, like any wildlife experience, but it's actually more rare to find wolves. You can certainly see lots of coyote at various parts at various times. But wolves in the valley, they're there. We're proud of that. We love that their range is expanding, but they're not a common sighting for us.
Also, still with winter, what areas are open in winter, and when do you have photographic workshops? When it says what areas, I'm assuming both in town and the national parks.
Sure. Well, so much of the parks, remember 97% is sort of open and accessible. And so the wilderness areas are accessible, but that's work. To get into Grand Teton National Park, there are portions of the roads that remain open that you can drive. There are lots of guided snowshoe trekking, cross-country skiing entrance. Jackson Hole Wildlife Safaris runs year-round, and they deliver an excellent experience year-round. And so they take you into accessible roadsides with very short distance hiking, if that's acceptable for your group or your population. Otherwise, the winter emphasis includes National Elk Refuge. And to take a sleigh ride, a horse-drawn sleigh ride in to see the elk is pretty spectacular. There are hundreds, thousands of elk that gather, and they do get fed. Their migratory patterns were cut off, but to be in the density of elk and to have a professional sort of explaining and giving you the interpretation, there's always a bald eagle nest in that refuge. That's really wonderful to see in the winter as well. And of course, coyote are prowling on the outskirts looking for mice. And that's a really neat part of any day. I would say probably 85% of our guests will spend time on a sleigh in the National Elk Refuge in the wintertime.
Thank you actually for that reminder. We did that as well, and it was such an incredible experience. I think it's just gone into the back of my head since I'm still so kind of traumatized from our snowmobile tour since Johan was driving the snowmobile. We only flipped once, but nonetheless, that's the only thing from an activity perspective that I think I remember. How easy is it to get into town, and how would people get into town?
We love our location because we sit on 3.5 acres and have a sense of isolation and definition to the property. And yet we're just 5 miles into the town of Jackson, and we're a little less than 5 miles up to the Jackson Hole Mountain Resort for skiing. Within reach, if you're there in the summer, you can jump on a bike and go to the best little honky-tonk bar in Wilson, and sit outside or sit up against the bar and have a beer. There's a little bit of shopping that's available. Again, that mile bike ride or walk over to Wilson. Right out of our front door is connection to the bike trails. And on a per capita basis, Jackson Hole has, I think, the most bike trails of any destination. We don't have a lot of folks, and we've got expansive trails that will take you into town or up to the resort or into Wilson or other destinations, including the national park.
Couple of logistical questions. One is a clarification, and then we're going to get into, of course, the specifics that everyone wants. So first clarification, on the website it says you have 5 rooms. You mentioned 7 rooms and are adding 3. Can you clarify how many adults can be at the inn at one time? So it's the maximum capacity for guests.
So we have a little bit of a unique situation in that we have a number of owners that love to recreate. And so we set aside 2 rooms available for guests, but also available for owners. So we do have 7. 5 rooms are always available for guests. And in our current configuration, we can easily sleep 18 to 20, but that includes certain of our rooms are family friendly. We've got a room called the bunkhouse you can see online. That's a Inglenook style bed. And then it's got a loft. So the kids absolutely love climbing up. We've got 2 singles up in the loft. That's all in the same room configuration. We've got rooms that are 2 queens. We've got the ability to add rollaways as necessary. The 3 additional rooms are going to be 2 kings and a queen. It's going to have a little extra dining and living space, a little additional deck environment. And so in the very near term, with 10 rooms, at a minimum, we're 20. With family and other groups sleeping, adults sleeping comfortably, we'll be at 24 to 26 readily.
And I'll also just kind of chime in here and say that actually right now we have a tour operator doing a site inspection at Bentwood, and then tomorrow another one checking in. So as I've been working with Keith to ensure that all of you, especially within North America, that are looking to get your clients closer to home, if you have the opportunity, if you do want to, see the inn, my follow-up will include all of Keith's specific information, and that is absolutely something that he'll work with you on, to make sure that you understand the experience too. Keith, the rates and the inclusions, do rates include meals, activities? Speak a little bit more about that, please.
You bet. So we were at about $469 in the summertime, and we dropped down to $289 for most of the winter. There's little seasonal variations in there, fluctuations. If there's an event or something taking place, some type of a special package. We're in a really strange market for folks not traveling outside, and they're refocusing back to the domestic environment. We're trying to keep a finger on the pulse and continue to deliver our excellence and understand what that means in the new world, our new settings. We think we're doing it because we're getting great guest feedback about what policies and practices we've implemented. And of course, we're abiding by Nat Geo standards, and they're striving to make those top tier industry standards. The inclusions include a full-on breakfast, it's chef prepared. Historically, again, that would have been a big buffet, but now we're doing a special plate and lots of extras as necessary, as requested, any dietary restrictions, any specialty favorites. Very happy to make sure that we're making breakfast memorable. We've got an evening wine and cheese. Again, we've had to reconfigure that and are doing special plates. And so we've got special hot hors d'oeuvres and cheeses, house pour, wine, beer, soft drink, whatever you might like. People love that on the back deck. That's a definite part of the Bentwood Inn guest experience. And we've always, our goal has always been that engagement. If you can remember a African safari lodge type of rich, after the adventures of the day gathering, we've always nurtured that. Now we do it with socially distanced seating. And we find the guests still enjoy the rapport. We're just not seating them as close to one another as we might have previously. And then the dinners are opt-in. And so the bistro dinners that we've served, we still provide on a twice weekly basis, which are much more formal affairs, 4-course. But we're in addition on a very, upon request basis, providing many more evening meals because people are requesting not to, they'd rather stay in than go out. And so we're happy to be doing that. We've been doing some great barbecues and other gathering. And of course, every family gets a basket of chocolate and marshmallows and graham crackers to enjoy s'mores around the campfire. And that is a perennial favorite.
How far in advance do activities need to be reserved?
We offer support for activity reservations or dinner reservations as a concierge service. And so upon reservation with us, if you express an interest in a wildlife safari or a river raft or guided fishing excursion, whatever it is your interest might lead you to, we're very happy to support you with those reservations. I might have a normal answer. I don't want to misrepresent. We're learning that these new guidelines in terms of rafting mean that some companies are not offering the same number of trips. And relative to summer demand this year, I don't know. And I don't want to misrepresent except to say that we've got great relationships with the vendors. We've always been sort of, we've got go-to. They turn to us as, top priority. And we're very happy to help and facilitate. We'll do our best and work with you on it. I don't know is the answer at this moment. I'm just fearful to give too much of a false or wrong answer.
Fair enough. Can you clarify again, do all rooms have fireplaces and are they all wood burning?
Okay. We have a beautiful 3-story river rock fireplace in the main great room that is wood burning, and that'll be set and the fire will be burning upon when you wake up in the morning and certainly when you come home at night. And that's almost year round because we're still a little chilly most times of the year, but it's also lovely for the ambiance. The 5 guest rooms that have fireplaces are propane, and so those are easy on, easy off. They heat the rooms very quickly and they contribute to that ambiance. Our other 2 rooms, current, and the 3 rooms that we're building will not have in-room fireplaces.
And also, again, in the follow-up, I'll make sure that there's lots of information and links. And so for the specifics on rooms and configurations and cost and all of those specifics, commissions, things like that, you can start that dialogue with Keith and get all of those specifics from him. Are transfers from Jackson Hole Airport included?
I do want to highlight, we're very happy to commission agents. We're always thrilled to have agent guests because then you've helped them vet it, you've helped them select it. They trust you, they show up without any sort of questions because they've been provided so much through us, through our relationship. So love commissioning agents for their recommendations. Sorry, I interrupted.
It's just like we're on a hike. Are transfers from Jackson Hole Airport included, and would renting a car be advisable?
Absolutely advisable. And I say that genuinely. There is public transport, and you can certainly take taxis. The Uber scene is another one that's a little bit in flux. But once you reach Jackson, and irregardless of the season, there's so much that you want to get out and see and do, and you want your guests to go out and see and do. If they've got a rental car, they're going to have easier access. Our local facilities are chock full of 4x4s. You can certainly take a front wheel drive and still get around most places. We're going to give you some guidance on where to go, which trails to get to, how to drive in certain areas. You can take multiple drives in different directions from Jackson, never leave your car, and feel like you've experienced so many different destinations. The Gros-Ventres are different than the Grand Tetons. Yellowstone, different still. Crossing over the pass onto the Idaho side and looking at the, looking back at the Tetons to the east from Idaho, they look like a different mountain range. So there's so much you want to get out and see and experience. You want your guests to get out and see and experience that we absolutely encourage. We do not offer a airport pickup, in part for that reason just described. We encourage renting a car, but if they want to come over, if somebody arrives late, different flight, there's excellent transport from the airport. We're only about, as the crow flies, it's 5 miles roundabout travel. It's about 10 to get out there. So it's not a difficult journey, and so we just encourage guests to take the taxis, Uber, other transport.
Keith flies from Boulder, and Johan and I drove up. It's also a really beautiful drive for people that are looking to avoid air travel right now and are close enough in that they don't mind a long day's drive. Can you reach the Lamar Valley from Bentwood, or should you stay up there for access?
Yeah, in order to see wolves, if you're going up to Lamar for wolves, there's that drama. It's just like the Serengeti in the context of that feeling of African plains, and you've got your predator-prey relationships on display. You want to sleep up there. We have guests that do it in a day. It's a long day, but genuinely, relative to the experience, my encouragement would be to do a couple of nights up there so you can wake up early, stay late in the field, go back and sort of settle in, and then come on down and see other wildlife in a different setting with us.
Perfect. I am going to be sending a follow-up, and that will include all of Keith's details. And then to answer the next question as well, yes, people can get photos to post on social and to share. And again, that's something that Keith will be able to provide to you. So that should be going out tomorrow with a recording of the webinar and then all of those details. And as of right now, I would say then the last question as of right now, but of course, if you have them, please keep sending them in, is a recommendation on the length of trip. What is your typical average length of stay? But would you say that that's ideal or longer?
Wow. So for folks that are traveling through the national parks, they usually come to us for 3 nights. In the summertime, we've actually got a 3-night minimum. We're finding that people are coming in and settling in. As the sort of summer reservations, fall reservations are coming through. In the wintertime, we tend to get week-long stays with family in groups. They might fly in on a Friday, maybe they leave work early on a Thursday, stay with us 5-6 nights. They'll get a 4 or 5 day ski pass, combined with a day of dog sledding and a day on a snow machine, and they'll take off a few hours early from skiing and they'll go into the National Elk Refuge. So we're great for any sort of length of stay, honestly. This summer, I'm going to say the flux has got me flummoxed to be able to answer directly. But 3, 4, 5 nights is easily done. It'll keep you busy every day. You wake up one day and you're going to go to one of the iconic hiking spots and lookouts. You're going to wake up the next and go horseback riding. You're going to wake up the next and that's a rafting day. And the next day is guided fly fishing. There's just so much to continue to do that you never really run out. So if you've got your families, your groups, your guests that are very, very dedicated to a particular recreational activity, we'll work with you to fulfill it for as many days as they'd like to be with us. And then we're going to encourage everyone to take a wildlife safari.
And actually, talk about when the marathon is going on, because my mom is planning on going to Boston in September and specifically planned her trip to avoid the Boston Marathon, but then I believe I heard it was canceled. So for any clients that are runners, talk about the marathon that you're doing, or half marathon that you're doing.
You're not supposed to mention me. Oh man, I guess that's like, making public commitments. You have to follow through. I've got a sister who's a real hardcore marathon runner. It's 19th and 20th, I believe, in September. It's a beautiful, beautiful marathon. Right now it's still on the books and they're planning to do it. And I happen to have, I guess, mistakenly shared with Brooke that my plan, and now it's public, is going to be to to run the half. So I'll join that mid-September there. It's a really beautiful time of the year. One of the special seasons, really, is the fall. The kids are usually the kids are back in school, but the wildlife are all coming down from the mountains as they start to get snow-capped and the snow starts to descend lower and lower and toward the valley. Elk bugling, if you've never heard it, is one of the most memorable sounds. It's like imagine the eeriest high-pitched sound you've ever heard, and then imagine it escalates, and it escalates a third time. This is when they're in the rut, and to go out into a field at sunrise or sunset and be present to hear them in that mode, in that time is a really special part. Now, when you combine that with Indian summer, which would be that 10-day stretch where the seasons have sort of settled in for the moment, the leaves have changed color, the aspens are shimmering, and it's beautifully cool nights, warm days with elk bugling. Can't promise, but those are 10 special days, usually late September, early October.
You preemptively answered the next question, the best time to see fall colors.
Yeah, I would say starting mid-September until the end of October. In fact, that's one of the reasons why Andy Coleman, our photographer that we do the wildlife photo workshops with, always selects the last week in October, because he feels like the valley has got all of its glorious definition. You've got snow-capped peaks, you've got the wildlife coming down, you've got dark because there will be some opportunity for clouds, and yet you'll have those moments of crystal clear sunshine. And you've got historically quite a few less people at that time.
Fantastic. That brings us to the end. Are there any, not yet, are there any rooms with 2 queen beds?
Yes, that's not listed on the website. It's a room we call the Polo Room. And yes, it's got 2 queen beds.
Excellent. I think now we've come to the end of our questions. So I will thank everyone very much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. We'll make sure that you have all of Keith's information and that you can follow up with him, and then he can follow up with you when and where needed. Thanks, Keith.
Great pleasure. Wonderful to speak with agents, and look forward to your redirecting guests as necessary until Africa opens up again. I'm right with you that, man, can't wait. But in the meantime, come get to know Jackson.
I love it.